It had been 50 years since Tom and Mary, in tears, gave their baby girl up for adoption because their high school romance could not bear the weight of raising a child. Although life moved on, they never stopped wondering where she was or who she had become. Then, an unexpected letter arrived. What they discovered about their daughter's life left them speechless and changed everything. George and Daisy, now 70 and 80 respectively, sit in their cozy living room reminiscing about their high school days. Margaret smiles warmly, knitting, while George flips through an old photo album. "Remember that summer at the lake?" George asks, his eyes shining. "How could I forget?" she replies, laughing softly. Their laughter fills the room, creating a moment of pure, shared nostalgia. An unexpected letter arrives, addressed to both of them. George picks it up from the mail pile, his eyebrows furrowed in curiosity. "Daisy, this is for both of us," he announces. Daisy stops knitting and looks up, intrigued. "Whose is it?" he asks himself out loud. They exchange intrigued glances, their excitement increasing as they contemplate the possibilities. Jorge carefully examines the envelope. Curiosity increases as they slowly open the envelope. Jorge's hands shake slightly, which makes the task a little more difficult. Daisy watches them carefully, forgetting her knitting. "So keep going," she says. With a deep breath, Jorge finally opens the letter. The sound of tearing paper seems to echo in the silent room. Their eyes meet, sharing a silent understanding of the gravity of the moment. Inside, they find a name and an address, along with a brief note that hints at their daughter's whereabouts. Daisy sighs softly. "Do you think it's really her?" she asks, her voice tinged with hope. George, examining the letter, murmurs, "Maybe. We have to find out." The contents of the envelope make their hearts race. A whirlwind of possibilities and emotions swirl around them. Torn between enthusiasm and apprehension, they decide to follow the lead. "We have to go," George says firmly. Margarita nods, although her eyes reflect a mixture of fear and hope. "It's our only chance," she agrees. The decision seems immense, but necessary. They cling to each other for a moment, drawing strength from their shared determination. The journey that follows promises answers that they have been looking for a long time. Jorge and Margarita plan their trip to the indicated address. They spread a map on the dining table, marking the destination. "We need to book a hotel," observes Margarita. George nods, adding, "And make sure the car is in condition for a long drive." They discuss the details, making sure everything is in order. Meticulous planning helps calm the nerves, giving them a sense of control. As they pack their bags, they reflect on the life choices that led them to this moment. Margarita folds the laundry carefully, stopping from time to brush a tear. "We did what we thought was best," he whispers. George approaches and hugs her gently. "Now, there are no regrets, only hope," he says softly. "The weight of your past choices hangs in the air, but so does the promise of what is to come." The memories of her youthful romance and the painful decision to give up her baby come back to the surface. Margaret recalls the days they spent together in high school, the carefree laughter and the stolen kisses. George recalls the agonizing night when they made the decision. "We were so young," says Margarita, her voice giving in. George simply nods, knowing that words fail to capture the depth of the past they share. They repeat the plan several times, making sure they leave nothing to chance. "Let's leave early, just in case," suggests Jorge. Daisy nods, checking the list one last time. "I think we have everything," he confirms. Meticulous preparations give them a sense of purpose. With each step, the excitement and nervousness increases. intertwining in a way that only a long-awaited trip can. The weight of the unknown hangs in the air as George and Margarita sit in their armchairs. George plays absent-mindedly with his glasses, while Daisy knits in silence. The tension is palpable. What if it's a dead end? George wonders aloud. Margarita pauses, her needles motionless. One step at a time, he replies softly. They both know that this letter can change their lives forever. Ready to discover the truth, they set out on their journey. With his bags packed and his car fueled, George turns to Margaret, who nods encouragingly. "Let's do it," he says, starting the engine. Margarita smiles softly and takes his hand. The landscape fades as they drive, each kilometer bringing them closer to the long-awaited answers. The silence in the car is filled with unspoken questions and cautious hope. Upon arriving at the address, George and Margaret come across a quaint house in the suburbs. The house is modest, but well-maintained, with a lovely porch. George parks the car and turns to Daisy. "So it's here," he says, grabbing the steering wheel. Margarita nods, her eyes scanning the house. "It looks inviting," he says. They take a deep breath before getting out of the car, their hearts pounding. The front yard is well-maintained, giving a sense of warmth and belonging. A neatly trimmed lawn, blooming flowers, and a cozy swing on the porch add to the inviting atmosphere. Jorge and Margarita exchange glances, appreciating the serenity of the environment. "It feels like home," says Margarita, her voice tinged with hope. Jorge nods, feeling comforted. They approach the house with more confidence, each step full of expectation. They hesitate for a moment before ringing the bell. George looks at Margarita, who gives him a slight nod. He presses the button, and the sound echoes through the house. Time seems to stretch as they wait, their hearts racing. "What if no one answers?" George murmurs. Margarita squeezes his arm. "Someone will answer," she assures him. The seconds pass slowly, each of them filled with growing tension and hope. A woman answers, and they introduce themselves, explaining their demand. "Hello, my name is George, and this is my wife, Margaret," George begins. The woman smiles politely. "How can I help you?" he asks. Margarita takes a deep breath. "We are looking for our daughter. We received a letter that brought us here," he explains. The woman's eyes widen in surprise, and she takes a step back, letting them in. "Please come in," she says warmly. The woman's eyes widen with recognition as she leads them inside. "I've been waiting for you," she says, her voice tinged with excitement. Jorge and Margarita exchange puzzled looks. "Was he?" asks Jorge, with his curiosity piqued. The woman nods, leading them into a cozy living room. "Please sit down," she says. When they settle into the comfortable chairs, a sense of cautious optimism fills the room, mingling with their anticipation. A sense of cautious optimism fills the room as they sit down. The living room is cozy and filled with family photos and warm lighting. The woman sits in front of them, her eyes full of kindness. "My name is Linda," she introduces herself. Margarita smiles. "Nice to meet you, Linda," he replies. Jorge leans forward, eager to know more. "What can you tell us about our daughter?" he asks anxiously. The woman reveals that she is a social worker who came across old adoption records and decided to connect long-lost families. "I specialize in bringing families together," explains Linda. "When I found your information, I knew I had to try to get you together." George and Margaret listen attentively, with emotions that mix hope and apprehension. "We have no words to thank you," says Margarita, her voice choked with emotion. Linda nods, understanding. She hands Jorge and Margarita an old photograph of a young woman who looks like them. George's hands tremble as he picks it up. "Is that her?" he whispers. Margarita peeks over his shoulder, her eyes widening. "She's like you," he murmurs. Linda smiles. "Yes, it's your daughter," she confirms. The photograph seems like a lifeline, a tangible connection to the daughter they only dreamed of. Tears run in their eyes. George and Margaret's heart skips a beat when they examine the photograph. It's their daughter, now grown up and smiling in the photo. His eyes, a mirror of Margarita's, and the same determined jaw as Jorge's. "She looks so happy," whispers Margarita, her voice trembling. Jorge nods, too dejected to speak. The image offers a glimpse into a life they have long wanted to know. Compressed by emotion, they gain the courage to ask for more details. "Can you tell us more about it?" asks Jorge, his voice not firm. Margarita grabs his hand, her eyes fixed on Linda. "We waited so long," she adds, tears overflowing. Linda, sensing her need for information, nods her head reassuringly. "I have some details that can help," she says, preparing to share what she knows. The social worker shares brief information about her life, without revealing her current whereabouts. "She had a wonderful childhood," Linda begins. Her adoptive parents were loving and supportive of her. George and Margaret listen intently, relieved to know that she has been taken care of. Now she is a successful woman. "But I cannot reveal where she is," says Linda seriously. "Even this small glimpse into her life brings you comfort." They learn that she had a happy childhood and that she grew up to be a successful person. He excelled at school and achieved great things in his career, says Linda, her voice full of pride. Jorge nods, forming a smile. "It's the best news we could hope for," he says. Margarita's eyes are moist, but her smile radiates joy. "We made the right choice," he whispers. Fueled by this limited but hopeful information, Jorge and Margarita continue their search. "We need to know more," Jorge says firmly as they leave Linda's office. Margarita nods. "We will visit the places where she may have been," suggests. They decide to start with the historical sites mentioned. Each step feels like a connection to his daughter, fueling his determination to find her. They visit historical sites mentioned in the scant details provided, hoping to find some connection to their daughter. They stroll through old neighborhoods, parks, and schools, wondering if she has ever been there. "Do you think she played in this park?" asks Margarita, looking around. Jorge smiles slightly. "Maybe," he replies. Although the places reveal little, the experience brings them closer and keeps hope alive. Conversations with old neighbors, friends, and local merchants begin to paint a picture of a warm and compassionate woman. "I remember a nice young woman who helped in the local shop," recalls a shopkeeper. "I think it must have been her," adds another. George and Margaret eagerly collect these fragments. "It is evident that she touched lives," says Margarita softly. Each new story builds a more complete picture of your daughter. Each conversation brings a mixture of hope and frustration, as people only vaguely recognize the woman in the photograph. "She looks familiar," is a common response. Jorge clenches his fists, trying to hide his disappointment. "At least they didn't say no," mumbles. Margarita puts a comforting hand on his arm. "We are getting closer," he insists. Despite the vague memories, his determination remains unwavering. Despite several dead ends, their determination keeps them going. "We cannot give up now," says Jorge. Margarita nods, with the determination mirrored in her hazel eyes. They compile a list of more people to talk to, more places to visit. "It's like putting together a puzzle," says Margarita. Although the pieces take time to appear, each one of them contributes to a clearer picture of her daughter's life. Their perseverance leads them to a crucial clue from an old neighbor. You may want to speak with Mrs. Thompson. She used to take care of a lot of kids in the area, suggests an elderly man. George's eyes light up. Do you know where I can find it? He asks enthusiastically. The man gives them an abode. Filled with renewed hope, they leave, feeling that they are finally making real progress. An old neighbor gives them a crucial piece of information, the name of a school their daughter attended. Margarita grabs the piece of paper with the name of the school. I can't believe it, Jorge, she says. This can even lead us to her, agrees Jorge, his eyes shining with a rare mixture of excitement and anxiety. They immediately decide that school will be their next stop in the search, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. George and Margaret visit the school, where they meet an elderly principal who remembers his daughter fondly. I remember her well, says the director in a voice full of nostalgia. Jorge and Margarita exchange looks of hope. Can we talk more about it? Asks Jorge, his voice tinged with anxiety. The director nods, welcoming them to his messy but cozy office, and they all sit down to delve deeper into the matter. The director shares stories about his academic brilliance and his kind-hearted nature, fueling his pride and enthusiasm. She was always at the top of her class, he recalls, and she was so compassionate. She was always helping others. Margaret wipes away a tear of joy. We always hoped she would have a good heart, he says. George listens intently, appreciating every word. Knowing that she had developed academically eased the lingering pains of her past decisions. By visiting the records of the school's alumni, they gain an important clue about their further studies. Here it is, announces the director, pulling from an old and dusty book. It looks like she went to study at a university nearby, he says, showing them the records. Margarita shakes Jorge's hand tightly. We're one step closer, she whispers. Jorge nods. This new information feels like a light that guides you toward your ultimate goal. Each piece of the puzzle makes them feel closer to a reunion, but it also raises more questions. What did she study? What is she doing now? Margarita wonders aloud as they walk back to the car. Jorge nods. We have become closer, but it seems that we still have a lot more to learn, he says. Despite his growing doubts, his motivation remains unshaken. The next destination, the university. They leave school with renewed hope and determination. The director's kind words and detailed records had invigorated us. Jorge starts the car and turns to Margarita. Ready for the next step? She asks. Margarita nods, smiling. Undoubtedly. They know that their daughter's school career can be the key to understanding the woman she has become. With good humor, they head to the university, eager to continue their search. They decide to visit the university where she studied, hoping to meet old classmates or professors. I hope someone remembers her, Margaret says, as they walk through the manicured grounds. The buildings rise above them, full of history and potential clues. Jorge observes his surroundings. It's strange to think that she walked these paths, he says. Margarita nods, feeling the same mixture of nostalgia and curiosity. The campus, packed with students, feels surreal and nostalgic at the same time. Young people start running, lost in their own worlds of classes and social life. Margarita observes a group of students talking animatedly. She could have been like them, she says quietly. Jorge smiles at the thought of it. Imagine all the memories she must have created here, he replies. They head to the administration building, hoping to find someone who knows her. A teacher remembers his daughter as a diligent and inspiring student. Oh yes, I remember her well, she says, her eyes shining. "She was one of the best students I have ever had." Jorge and Margarita lean, clinging to every word. "Can you tell us more?" asks Margarita, her voice overflowing with enthusiasm. "Without a doubt," agrees the professor. "She was always dedicated and passionate, a true beacon on campus." More clues are beginning to emerge about his professional career, pointing to a prominent occupation in the field of healthcare. "She said she wanted to help others, especially those most in need," recalls the teacher. George exchanges a proud glance with Margaret. "It seems that she kept that compassion," he comments. Daisy nods, feeling a new sense of pride. These new clues deepen their understanding of their daughter, leaving them eager to keep searching. Encouraged by these new discoveries, George and Margaret feel they are on the verge of a significant discovery. "We are getting so close," whispers Margarita, clinging to Jorge's hand. George nods. The hope in his eyes is unmistakable. "We can't stop now," he replies. With renewed energy, they trace the next steps on a sheet of paper. Each clue seems to be a step closer to the daughter they never stopped loving. They decide to follow the newly found clues to their possible place of work. "Let's see if we can figure out where she may have worked," suggests Margarita. Jorge nods and picks up his coat. "We have come so far. We will continue," he replies. They collect their notes and leave once more, with mutual determination carrying them forward. The trail seems to be taking them to a place full of answers. George and Margaret's next stop is a hospital where records suggest she may have worked. They arrive at the large and modern building with the atmosphere full of hustle and bustle typical of a health center. "Do you think it's here?" asks Jorge, his eyes scanning the tall structure. Margarita nods, with determination stamped on her face. "There's only one way to find out," she replies, heading for the entrance, with Jorge following her closely. They speak to colleagues and friends who describe a deeply caring and professional person. "She was always so dedicated to her patients," recalls a nurse, smiling warmly. Another colleague adds, "Without a doubt, she has made a difference in many lives here." Jorge and Margarita listen, their hearts overflowing with pride. "It seems that she inherited his compassion," Jorge murmurs to Margarita, who smiles in return, letting the moment sink in. Every story they hear fills them with pride, but also with a longing that seems insatiable. "I wish we had seen her grow up and become this incredible woman," says Margarita softly, tears shining in her eyes. Jorge nods, feeling the same bittersweet emotion. "We're learning so much about her," he says. Although the longing for a reunion increases, the stories they hear offer a little comfort, giving them a glimpse of his compassionate spirit. They learn that she was involved in numerous charitable activities and that she made a lasting impact on the people she met. "I was always organizing charity campaigns," adds one of his colleagues. Margaret is proud. "She is truly unique," they say. Jorge's eyes get teary. "It's wonderful to know that she was a light in so many lives," he says. The stories they collect paint a beautiful picture of their daughter's generous soul. However, officials can only provide limited information about your current whereabouts. "We don't know for sure where she went after leaving here." They apologize. Jorge and Margarita's shoulders drop slightly in disappointment. "Thank you for everything," replies Margarita graciously. Jorge adds, "We appreciate the help." Despite the lack of a concrete clue, they leave with a fuller understanding of their daughter's life. The search can be challenging, but they are not willing to give up. They leave the hospital with a mixed feeling of joy and impatience. "She did so much good," comments Jorge as they walk to the car. Margarita nods, although impatience is evident in her eyes. "But we haven't found it yet," he replies with a sigh. Even so, the joy of knowing more about their daughter's character keeps us hopeful. They decide to continue their search, more determined than ever. Their trip takes an unexpected turn when they receive another letter from the same social worker with more detailed information. George opens it enthusiastically. "Daisy, look at this!" he exclaims. Margarita hurries to arrive, her heart pounding. The letter mentions her daughter's current city and implies that she is also looking for them. "She is also looking for us!" Margaret exclaims, tears of joy running down her cheeks. The news fills them with renewed energy. This letter reveals her current city and indicates that she has also been looking for her biological parents. The coincidence seems miraculous, and their hearts race with anxiety. "We have to go there," declares Jorge, his hands trembling with excitement. "Yes, we have to find her," agrees Margarita, her voice full of determination. The ambiance and vibe of the city are perfectly related to the daughter's personality, according to what they have discovered so far. The coincidence seems miraculous, and their hearts race with anticipation. "We must prepare ourselves for all possibilities," advises Jorge, his voice trembling with emotion. Margarita nods, grabbing his hand tightly. "It's hard to believe we're so close," she whispers. They look at the letter again. The excitement is palpable. The anticipation increases with each passing minute, bringing them one step closer to the reunion they have dreamed of for years. The ambiance and vibe of the city are perfectly in tune with her daughter's personality, according to what they have discovered so far. "She'd love this here, don't you think?" Margarita thinks, observing the busy streets and charming cafes. Jorge agrees, a smile spreading across his face. "It looks like her, vibrant and full of life," he replies. They walk from one side to the other, imagining her walking through these same streets, feeling even more connected to her. They spend 2 more days gathering courage and planning their next steps. "We have to approach this carefully," insists Jorge, taking notes. Margarita nods, double-checking her plans. "We can't afford to leave anything to chance," she agrees. They review the address several times, making sure they know the way. Every detail is analyzed, giving them a sense of control and preparation for the emotional encounter ahead. Going to the indicated address, they prepare for the moment of truth. Jorge checks the map again, his hands steady despite his nervousness. "It's here," he says, with determination in his voice. Margarita takes a deep breath. "Let's really get to know her," she whispers, amazed. They get in the car, their hearts beating with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The trip feels like the culmination of a lifetime of waiting. When they arrive at the last address, Jorge and Margarita come across an elegant but welcoming house. The manicured lawn and flower beds exude warmth. "It's beautiful," says Margarita, looking at the house. Jorge nods, feeling a sense of peace. "She must have had a good life here," he adds, smiling. They stop for a moment to compose themselves, the weight of the years and their quest pressing on them. They approach the door with nervous excitement and ring the doorbell with trembling hands. Jorge looks at Margarita to reassure her, who nods her head firmly. "It's now," she murmurs. They can hear footsteps approaching, and their hearts race with each step. Jorge takes a deep breath to calm down. Time seems to stretch infinitely as they wait for the door to open. The end of their journey is within reach. Time seems to stand still as they wait for an answer. Jorge adjusts his glasses, trying to calm his racing heart. Margarita squeezes his hand tightly, with her eyes fixed on the door. "It feels like an eternity," says Jorge in a low voice, his voice full of expectation. Margarita nods, unable to speak. The seconds pass, each one bringing them closer to the revelation they have sought for so many years. Finally, the door opens and a woman, about the age of her daughter, appears before them. Their eyes are curious and cautious. "Hello," she greets in a soft voice. Margarita grabs Jorge's arm tightly. "We are Jorge and Margarita," Jorge begins, his voice trembling. "We have come from far away to meet you." The woman's expression softens, suggesting recognition. She walks away, inviting them to explain further. The moment seems surreal. She looks at them curiously, and they introduce themselves, sharing their long and arduous journey. "We have been looking for our daughter for what seems like a lifetime," explains Margarita, with tears welling up. Jorge nods, echoing his feelings. "We received a letter that brought us here," he adds. The woman listens attentively, her eyes fill with understanding. "The weight of your story hangs in the air, creating a connection before any questions are asked." The woman, visibly moved, invites them to come in to talk. "Please come in," she says warmly, stepping aside to let them pass. Jorge and Margarita enter the inviting living room, their emotions in a whirlwind. "Thank you for having us," says Jorge. Margarita nods, her eyes scanning the room for any clue about her daughter. The atmosphere is full of promise. The culmination of his long quest is finally within reach. When they settle into the living room, the woman hands them a small box. Jorge and Margarita exchange puzzled looks. "What is this?" asks Jorge. The woman smiles gently. "One thing you should see," he replies. Margarita looks at Jorge with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They can't help but feel the weight of what might be inside. "Go, open it," encourages the woman in her soft voice. Tears run in his eyes as he explains the content. "They are memories of the adoptive parents," she begins, her voice trembling. "They passed away recently." Jorge and Margarita listen attentively. Their own eyes fill with tears. Margarita takes Jorge's hand and squeezes it gently. "They wanted her to find you eventually," the woman continues, tears falling freely. The meaning of the moment takes hold of all of them. Inside the box are letters and memorabilia from her adoptive parents, who recently passed away. George carefully lifts up a framed photograph of their baby daughter. "She was so tiny," he whispers, his voice cracking. Margarita picks up a letter, her hands shaking. "Read it," George insists softly. She nods, carefully unfolding the paper. The memories and emotions that these objects contained were almost too strong to bear. She reveals the letters that contained the original information about the adoption and the desire for her daughter to meet her biological parents. Margarita holds her breath and reads aloud. "We always hoped she would meet you one day." George's eyes fill with tears as he listens. "They wanted what we wanted," he says, his voice full of emotion. The hope shared between two pairs of parents adds depth to their pain and joy. Thrilled, George and Margaret realize that their daughter's life has been filled with love and happiness. "She was lucky to have them," says George, wiping away a tear. "And they loved her very much," adds Margarita, her voice barely above a whisper. The realization sets in, bringing a sense of peace. They are grateful to know that she has had a beautiful life, full of love and opportunities. They learn that she had actively sought out her biological parents, just as they had sought her out. She never gave up, shares the woman. Margarita sighs, placing a hand over her heart. "Neither do we," she says softly. Jorge nods in agreement. "We've been on this journey for so long," he adds. Knowing that their daughter was also looking for them only strengthens their determination and connection. Happiness and relief take over them as they share stories and memories, creating bonds with their common stories. She always liked animals, says Margaret, smiling as she remembers. I volunteered at every opportunity, adds the woman. Jorge nods, feeling closer to his daughter with every word. It's amazing how she looks like you, Daisy, he says. The joy of discovering her daughter's life fills the room, lightening the weight of her long search. They spend hours talking, and each revelation makes the emotional weight a little lighter. She was always so curious and eager to learn, recalls the woman. Margarita's eyes shine. She inherited this from Jorge, he says. George laughs. Oh, I think she got a good part of you too. The conversation flows easily. The connection they share surpasses years of separation. Each story, each memory, brings them closer to the daughter they have long wanted to know. The reunion they longed for becomes a reality when they embrace their daughter for the first time as parents and son. Tears run down their faces as they hug each other tightly. We miss you every day, whispers Margarita. We've waited so long for this moment, adds Jorge, his voice breaking. Their daughter, equally moved, whispers, I waited too. The years of longing dissolve in the warmth of his embrace. Their journey of discovery culminates with a renewed sense of family and a tacit vow never to lose each other again. They sit together, sharing dreams for the future. We have so many years to catch up, says Margaret. And we will recover, assures the daughter. Jorge shakes hands with both of them. We are a family again, he says, his voice full of determination and love. Each of them silently vows never to abandon this newfound bond.